Good afternoon. Welcome to today's November 24th, 2021 broadcast of the Central Valley Report. This is Lisa Wolf-Wright, and I'm glad to welcome you. This is our attempt to return news coverage to Eureka County, and I am happy to welcome Michael Mears, the Eureka County Assessor, to this special noontime meeting of the Central Valley Report. Welcome, Michael. Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. So I wanted to, in going over some of the things that were raised at the Eureka County Commission meeting on November 19th, there were a couple of items that that stuck out, and I wanted to start with discussing this. There was the 9:50 Commissioners Agenda item, discuss, approve, or deny whether to challenge the Nevada State Legislature's redistricting and reapportionment outcomes prompted by the 2020 census and the governor's proclamation to convene a special session of the legislature for that purpose beginning November 12th and all matters properly relating thereto. So what's going on, and if you can give us context, and why does this matter to the people of Eureka County? And how does it impact your office and what's happening going forward?
So the state's charged with redistricting the Assembly and Senate districts after the, every 10-year census, and that process got started as soon as the census data became available sometime in October. As they're moving lines around and looking for population equality amongst the different districts, for whatever reason, Assembly District 32 and Senate District 14, and drawing those lines, they grabbed the very northern portion of Eureka County. So that part of Eureka County that lies north of Interstate 80 is the portion that they grabbed and dropped into those respective Senate and Assembly districts. Those were traditionally all part of kind of what we consider the eastern districts, where Assemblyman Ellison currently is and Senator Gokachia currently is. Eureka County was all part of that eastern district, and now they opted in their redrawing of the lines to sever that little portion of Eureka County north of Interstate 80 off, and then a portion of western Elko County as well got lumped into this district. And it all ties across. It includes all of Lander County, Pershing County, Humboldt County, and then all of northern Washoe County, including some portions of, some of the suburbs outside of the city of Reno and the city of Sparks are also part of these two districts. Our chair put that on the agenda because he was just concerned as to why in the world did they do this? What does that mean, for the voters that exist in that part of the county? And quite honestly, population wise, it's only 23 people that even occupy that space, because most of that ground north of Interstate 80 is dedicated to mining operations and or the TS Ranch cattle operation. There's not a lot of residences or residents to speak of. And then as we worked through with the county clerk, it equates out to about 10 voters that it impacts. So I have not heard since the meeting. Chairman Gokachia was looking into whether the county might want to join in on the pending lawsuit that's being brought forward to challenge some of the other district lines. I'm hoping that we'll see an update on that on the meeting on December 6th of where we stand. But
So
that
with,
was the opposition is, why'd they just take this little piece of Eureka that's always been in these other districts that only really has a minimal amount of population and or voters.
and that would give them different representatives then, as opposed
Exactly.
to Ellison and Goagachia?
Yes, it would. And more than likely, well, depending upon where that representation came from, but what it also does, Lisa, is it requires the county clerk to issue another set of ballots because those folks wouldn't be voting for the same individuals that the rest of us would in the remainder of the county. So it's additional cost to create two sets of ballots for just literally 10 people or so at this point.
So do we know if, I believe it was mentioned in the meeting that the lawsuit had to be brought by a private individual or a
That's correct.
voter as opposed to by a municipality. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it sounds from what Chairman Gokachia had to say at the meeting that is happening. It sounds like some people in southern Nye County will be the ones to initiate the bringing forward the case, and then others will certainly join in as they feel compelled to do so.
So, I mean, it's just so odd. And I guess, at some point, perhaps Assemblyman Goagachia and Senator Goagachia and Assemblyman Ellison would need to be asked how that could even happen, affecting, Senator Goagachia's home county, to slip that in. That's really strange.
And again, if you were following the special session at all and this was party line decided, as the entire last legislative session was, because the entire legislature right now, both houses, is democratically controlled. They're able to basically pass out whatever they desire. The
Wow.
Republicans don't have enough votes to stop it. And then, of course, we have a Democrat governor that's going to support whatever comes out of the legislative process. And we saw that in the last session. We saw it in the redistricting effort. On the flip side of that, if the Republicans were in control of both houses, they'd be doing the exact same thing with the opportunity to redraw the lines. This is my third time through this process, sitting in this chair and watching it at the state level and also at the county level. So, the idea that, well, they just took advantage of the situation. Both parties would have done the same thing given the opportunity. So this is what it is. That's what it's about. When you're looking at redistricting on the state level and the federal level, there's a lot more politics that goes into it than just trying to equalize population across the representative areas. There's a lot more of, how do we leverage this to potentially get a Democrat or Republican majority in the next election cycle? Those kind of things do go into play when we start talking about redrawing the lines.
All right, well, let's look at the 1015 agenda item, which is related to your responsibility to post and publish notices of completion and availability and or the issue of redistricting. So what's the relationship between the local lines and these state districts?
So locally, Lisa, we're basically just looking at the population at the end of the day as our starting point. The Assembly and Senate districts don't have any influence on our commission districts and how we go about balancing those. It's more just a matter of who is representing which parts of our county based on the state lines. On the county level, my first charge is looking at how our current districts lie and what the population distribution is of those currently based on the 2020 census data and the population reports. And when we put that up initially, we saw that we had quite an imbalance across the 3 districts with the supposed shifting and movement of the population from 2010 to 2020. So then, my job and my staff member, Michael, assisted me on this, but I am the county's mapper and GIS expert. So we set out to start looking at where we needed to shift things. As I reported in the meeting, there was a reduction in overall population from 2010 to 2020. We lost 132 people in that 10-year span. So our current population based on the 2020 census is 1,855 people. We saw a substantial reduction in population in the southern part of Eureka County and Eureka Town and Diamond Valley, and then a fairly significant increase in population in the north end of our county in Crescent Valley and the areas out north of Crescent Valley up State Route 306. And so as Michael and I were looking at our distribution, there was some real movement that was going to have to take place here to accommodate balance of the population. And so that's the first thing we're trying to get to is equalize the population. So with 1,855 people, our target was 618 people per district if we could get there.
Right.
We painted, if you will, tested a number of different scenarios, well over 20 different scenarios that we ran. We had several that got us within, 1 or 2 people per district, which is a great balance. But the next challenge that we come into, Lisa, is that you have to be able to create a legal description for those districts at the end of the day. Once the commissioners decide upon the districts that they want to adopt by ordinance, I then have to legally describe those so that they can be geographically recognized, if you will. So the challenge comes, what do you use for that? Your most obvious geographic boundaries are first of all, your county borders, but also roads become a real, that's just an obvious border to be able to describe the edges of a boundary. Mm-hmm. When Michael and I started laying geography, parcels and roads and other things on top of these different scenarios, we found out right away that many of them were not workable because they could not be geographically defined. So we continued our work and we ultimately whittled it down to what we thought were 4 reasonable proposals that created fair distribution of the population, but could also be geographically defined.
And what are now we ended up, I remember in the discussion, with a potential difficulty in the domiciles of 2 of our county commissioners, that Rich McKay and JJ Goakachia could potentially find themselves in the same district. Why? Yeah. How did that happen?
Well, again, my job in my mind, being tasked with redistricting, is to first of all try to find a balance of the population amongst the districts. And then my second point is to be able to geographically define them. So I'm not looking at it in any other way. I realized when we settled on the 4 proposals that we did, that in 2 of those scenarios, it would put 2 commissioners in the same district. I wasn't certain what the process would be if that were to happen and if that were to be adopted. But I figured my job is to produce proposals and
right. See what all the options.
Let the board decide, or let the board give me additional direction that they would like me to take and try to rework the lines in another way. So, we put it on the table. I really didn't expect that it would fly, if you want the truth, once we realized that. But as I also pointed out in the meeting, the particular census block that JJ's residence lies in is a fairly large geographic block. And so when you grab that block, it affects a lot of population, and it becomes a little bit tricky to kind of move it around or move lines around it. There's not a lot of logic, especially geographic logic, that goes into the census blocks and tracts. Some of them follow logical boundaries, but a lot of them, they're just kind of random. It looks like literally a spider web when you bring it up on a map and visualize it. So it gets quite challenging. We did hear back from Mr. Butel's office regarding what happens with two commissioners if they are both in the same district and that district is adopted. In the case of Rich and JJ, since Rich's seat is the one that's up for re-election next year, JJ still he's midterm at this point. So what would happen is Rich would be allowed to fulfill the remainder of his current term, and then he would be out. And somebody, other people would have to file to run for the district, what would be District 1 now, if that proposal was adopted. That's probably not going to happen. So, and just as a heads up for you, but Michael and I did go back. I actually worked over the weekend and we worked Monday morning together, finalized a couple of new proposals yesterday that we sent out to the board members to take a look at. And I have to say that we got the direction that, they liked the idea of the geographic kind of zones that I brought up with the proposal that I preferred, with the southern zone, the kind of Diamond Valley, Pine Valley middle zone, and then the northern zone, because I felt like that made a lot of sense in terms of the communities that are represented on the board, and how they're represented.
Everyone has an identity then.
That's how I felt about it. But I also recognize that was probably going to be challenging when we realized that's going to put two commissioners in the same district. The board agreed with me on the representation. So the direction that I took away from the meeting was try to maintain that somehow, but get us out of being in the same districts. Right. And so that's what Michael and I worked on. Our last proposal that I came up with, and I can shoot you a PDF of that if you'd like, so you can look it over. I think that's going to be the one that sticks. And we're going to call that proposal 6, but it does a nice job of, it's clean on a geographic basis of being able to define it. It keeps everybody in their current respective districts, so nobody's getting put into the same district. And the representation still kind of maintains that southern, middle, northern, those zones, if you will, I will call them that. But, I was really intrigued by that when I started working on that, and that one proposal really worked well for us. And I told Michael, this is exactly how the county makeup of the board should be. We should have Southern and somebody from the town of Eureka. We should have somebody in the ag sector, which is Diamond Valley, Pine Valley ranches, because you want that ag interest represented. And of course, we want the folks in the north end to have representation on the board. It just, that makeup of the board makes all sense in the world. So with the proposal, I think they're gonna accept. And of course, we're coming up to the holiday, so I haven't heard back from anybody after sending it out yesterday. Will accomplish that, and it actually accomplishes it with a one-person deviation. Essentially, it's like 619, 618, and 617 is our distribution on the population.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's tight.
You want to talk for a second about the software that is helping you and your coworker do this analysis and create these district lines.
Certainly. So, as I stated earlier, this is the third time, my third census, the third time I've been tasked with redistricting. The prior two censuses, first of all, just finding the data that you needed from the census website was challenging just on its own. The directories were not really well defined. They were a little better in 2010, but they were still challenging. And then the other challenge that you have in my realm, in mapping in a computer environment, is you can have table data, but if you don't have that tied to something geographic, like a polygon, it doesn't do you any good in terms of trying to do visual analysis and do computer analysis on that data. So in the 2010 census, what I had to do was literally, there were 3 separate databases that were in tabular form that I had to pull down, somehow join them together, and I used Microsoft Access to do that, and then attach those to the actual census blocks, which are a geographic feature and have a shape to them, a polygon, if you will, that I could play with and analyze. The software company that makes our GIS software, which is our computer mapping software, is called ESRI. And ESRI, after the 2010 census and a lot of requests across the GIS realm, including myself, asking them, is there something you could do to help us before 2020 comes around? And so they got on it, and they came up with a very dynamic extension of our software program, and it's literally called Redistricting.
Wow.
But what they did is, on the back end, they went and got the census data for us. And they did the compiling of it and bringing it into the system in a format that allowed for analysis. And then they went even further and created some just really dynamic tool sets that allowed us to make changes to the boundaries and in real time see what our population results, our demographic results. In real time, it would tabulate those things for us. And we could look at that and say, no, that's way off of our 618 target, or wow, that's really close. Let's bring in some other geography and see how we can line that up. It made all the difference in the world. It was a $2,500 investment for me and my budget, but it was money well spent. And the number of hours that I would have had to put into this. And even especially now that we had to kind of go back and massage some things after the last meeting, we were able to do that in fairly short order and look at a few more scenarios.
So this is basically a requirement, excuse my dog. This redistricting is also related to the 2020 census.
Yes. Yeah, like I say, all government jurisdictions are required after the census releases their data to do that analysis. And whether it's school board trustees seats, if it's city council seats,
All across the board,
everybody has to do it. Everybody has to do it.
So what's the approval process then? Is this something that's ultimately voted on by the county commissioners? Does it have to go before the voters, or is it internal?
So obviously the public gets an opportunity to weigh in. And so they do that by having a public hearing. The actual commissioner districts will be set by ordinance, which requires a public hearing.
Okay.
And then is ultimately approved by the Board of Commissioners. But it has to be an ordinance drawn up. And there again, that goes back to why I have to be able to write legal descriptions, because those legal descriptions become part of that ordinance and describe these districts for the next 10 years.
I see. Okay. Well, let's move on to, and I know you and I spoke a little bit yesterday, and we touched on the other agenda item, which was, and it goes to the advances in technology and the discussion that I'm not sure how it came about, but there's a discussion on the table, and there was a public hearing on the issue of potentially authorizing a change in employee work schedules with a request that employees currently working a 5-day, 40-hour work week be allowed to change to a 4-day, 40-hour work week, 4/10s. And there was a public hearing. So it's kind of, the whole process. And so I guess there was a movement within county employees to request this be considered. And I just thought it would be interesting to touch on, the process and the discussion.
Certainly. I brought this up quite a number of years ago. Having the flexibility to set our office hours, because it's the elected officials that have statutory requirements of hours of operation or being open to the public. The county board of commissioners has the ability in any county to set those hours. The statute doesn't necessarily specifically say it has to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The board has the discretion to set those hours. This actually came about just recently because the school district has been on a 4-day school week down here, 14 years or so now. It's been quite a while anyways.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Yeah.
But one of the things that we were running into or we were seeing is that since we don't have daycare, we don't have a lot of individuals that are offering babysitting services, and we don't have a formal daycare down here. Fridays get to be challenging for people that have, especially grade school age kids, finding where did they go on Friday when mom and dad have to go to work.
Wow. And
that became more of a, I guess it was more obvious to us more recently as the clerk treasurer was trying to fill some positions in her office. She had specific applicants that said, I would have applied for this position if it was a Monday through Thursday 10-hour, but I can't work Fridays because I don't have anybody to watch my kids on Fridays. And she actually lost an individual in her office recently that got an opportunity to go to work at the school district. And she jumped at it because it saves her a commute on Friday into town. It saves her babysitters on Friday for 3 kids.
wow.
And that was her reason in her exit interview for leaving the position. She liked her job, but it was a cost savings to her at the end of the day. So Lisa Haney actually brought this forward at a previous meeting to make that point, and that we might be impeding our potential, applicant pool for other county positions because of the hours that we have to keep. And maybe it would be worth considering whether a 4-day work week would work. We found out right away that not all the departments were on board with that idea. And again, it really applies to the elected officials. The other departments are kind of more flexible.
So which departments does it apply to then?
So it applies to the assessor, the clerk treasurer, the clerk recorder, the treasurer's office, the district attorney, my office. Those are the ones that are defined in the NRS as to set public hours. And so it went around to all the departments, and the different department heads had the opportunity to kind of weigh in on it. And so we did at the previous meeting, and I was actually out of town at other meetings, so I submitted written comments. But at the last meeting last week, I had an opportunity to just bring up my points and some additional points that I hadn't made as to how it could benefit my office. I recognize right away that for some departments, it's not workable or it's not preferable. And I would hope that the board wouldn't try to make it, one size fits all, that they could just maybe give us flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing the recorder's office saying that they had people coming in, right when they were closing, and they had, for whatever reason, I guess they had to do the recordings right at that time, and they were there till 6 o'clock as it was anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of her scenarios, and she does have that happen, as she said, 4 or 5 times a year. It's the same outfit every time, but it's just when they're able to get here and get stuff done. As I stated, for my office, it actually is a cost savings, because 5 months out of the year, we're out in the field at least 2 days a week.
Right.
Because we have to reappraise property every 5 years, and we have to physically review the property. And so in order to do that, we have to travel to the property. And a lot of our property is north of town, and even north up in your neck of the woods in Crescent Valley, and those rural subdivisions around there. Our ranches are way out there, some of them. So as I stated, during reappraisal, other than when we're doing the town of Eureka, we spend a good half of our day just traveling to and coming home from the area that we're going to work. And we run well over 200 miles a day out traveling about to do our work. Having that extra 4 hours it would equate to each week, if I was on a 410 schedule, actually would mean we'd be getting 3 days worth of reappraisal work done in 2 days. And that would be significantly less mileage on, I do have a county vehicle that's issued to me through my budgeting process that's now 12 years old. So we do have a vehicle that gets wear and tear on it. And of course, now with fuel being as expensive as it is, next summer is going to be expensive to do our work, but it has to be.
So this is an ongoing exploration, is it? I mean, it hasn't actually been decided. I mean,
it hasn't been decided, at least as far as I know. I don't know how much momentum it's actually going to get. We'll see.
But there is the possibility of flexibility potentially. I mean, or they're concerned about keeping the county building open. I mean, that the offices that are requesting 410, because since the district attorney's office is not, are both in the same building, aren't they?
Yes, we're right next door to each other. Whereas the treasurer's office has opted, they would prefer not to do the Monday through Thursday schedule. They would prefer to maintain the Monday through Friday. So the building's technically going to be open. It just, these two departments, if you will, would not necessarily be accessible on Fridays. But also, as I stated, Lisa, there is no foot traffic in my office to come see Michael Mears, the assessor.
Right.
There is foot traffic in my office to come in and do DMV transactions, which is not statutorily any part of my job. It's a service that I sign a contract and I provide to this community, this county, because it's an important service and people really appreciate having it available to them. But what I will also tell you is, because of COVID, because of staffing shortages and other things that have happened, I have changed the hours of operation and days of operation for DMV 4 different times in the last 3 years to accommodate various scenarios. People adapt, they get used to it. And, I get a few people that complain about it, but they get over it and they just adjust to be able to, if they need to physically come in, they know the hours and days we're here, they adjust to that and they make that accommodation to come in.
Right. Well, I think all DMVs, I know in, going to Elko, I mean, a lot of scheduling and appointments, and I mean, DMV's been really, when you can go to the DMV over, during COVID has been challenging.
Well, COVID was a real nightmare, especially because when we did reopen last spring, I didn't know what what we were going to end up with, because we had been, we had to stay home for a month. Then we came back, but DMV still hadn't opened. We didn't know what the opening plan was going to be for DMV. And then we got word finally that they were maybe going to at least let the satellite offices like ours reopen in May. So I started, how are we going to control the governor's mandate of 6 foot distancing, mask requirements, if people are just allowed to come in and out of the building at will? And what kind of, since people couldn't get in and they were waiving off penalties and everything else, what kind of onslaught, if you will, of traffic were we going to experience the moment that we opened the doors? So I made the decision, and my staff concurred, to go on an appointment basis.
Yes.
And so our front door was locked. We literally installed a doorbell so people could come and they could ring the bell and we would go and physically let them in, but they were not allowed in the building if they did not have an appointment to come in. And it worked. I had a few people that, you always have some grumblers. Sorry, it's an inconvenience for us too, but we got through it. But the saving grace, Lisa, was June. The Ely DMV shut completely down because of staffing. They had people that went out with COVID. They had a gal that was pregnant over there that went on maternity leave, and they literally had to close their doors for over a month because they didn't have anybody to work over there. So all of those White Pine County folks from Lund and Ely and Cherry Creek and Ruth needed somewhere to go. They were coming over here to Eureka.
Wow.
And so without the appointments, we'd have just drowned. But the appointments saved us. I worked with the supervisor over there, and they put a sign up on the door that Eureka was available by appointment. And you wouldn't believe the number of people that drove the 77 miles over here to do their DMV because they couldn't get in Ely. But that decision saved our bacon. But to my point is, we did that. People adjusted to it. The service was still available. We just had to get at it a little bit different way. At one point, we were only open on Thursdays and Fridays to do DMV because that was a dedicated 2 days we would do DMV, because the rest of the week we needed to do our other work. And I was down to just three people here, 2 and myself. We couldn't get our assessor work done with the amount of DMV volume we were also dealing with. So the idea that we're not here to serve the public, we're here to serve the public. We're here to serve the public, in my scenario, Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day.
Just like the school district does.
And you adjust to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and my other point is, as you heard me, but with the investments and the work that we've made with technology over the last decade, 2 decades since I've been here, that's why we don't have foot traffic to come into my office or even to the treasurer's office, the recorder's office. We have so many resources available through our website that people utilize. Online payments, they can record documents in the recorder's office right there off the website. They don't have to physically come in. They can submit things electronically. Most of the payments, I can assure you, in the treasurer's office are being done electronically because people, or they mail them in. They mail a check in. A lot of our DMV is done that way. They just mail us a check with their renewal card and we process it and kick it back out to them. Or they phone call. We do it over the phone with a credit card. But the idea that, and the chair stated, he's hearing all this. I'm going to tell you right now, Lisa, if that is the conversation that's going on in this county, in this community, I would know about it.
Right.
Because the people in this community know me very well. They know that in the 25 years that I've been here, that I'm wide open. I'm easy to talk to. I'm an honest, straightforward guy. If you got a complaint, you bring it to me. I'm going to address it. you may not like how I'm going to deal with it, but I'll sit down and talk to you.
Well,
But
I
so
just
people
put
know
out
they can talk
a
to me.
request for whoever listens to this broadcast that if you are particularly attached to, Monday through Friday schedule for certain county offices, to please take the time to express yourself to the county commission. Make a note so that you can be on the record. Otherwise, we heard from, the sheriff's office. There was some, interest in having the ability to work with one's staff. And, this is participatory government. So, Mike, while I have you, I'd also like to give an opportunity for you to talk about, you wear a lot of hats in the Eureka community, and the holidays are upon us. I'll wish you an early happy Thanksgiving.
You as well.
Which is tomorrow. But let's talk about, you're doing something special for the community in December. Can you let our listeners know what that is, please?
So we have two programs coming up that I'm involved in and really excited about. First one is going to be on the 5th of December. It is the 5th. I think it's the 5th. Is our Christmas tree lighting. We just two Sundays ago, crew of Eureka Lions members, we went and got all of the lights up in town and got the tree decorated. And then the night of December 5th, we'll have a little program down at the fire station, and we'll flip the lights on in town and on the tree and sing some Christmas carols. And so I'll be leading that and be part of that program. And then also I'm in an Irish duet, I guess, called Two Blokes in a Squeeze Box. Ralph Kuda, who is the music teacher up at the high school and elementary school, and he's a very accomplished accordion player. And he and I have been playing music together now for about 12 years. And we just have kind of found this little niche with Irish music. I'm Irish, or at least part of my bloodline, a good part of it is Irish. And I don't know, it was 10 years ago or so, maybe we got the wild idea to do a St. Patrick's Day show here in town, and it kind of just took off from there. So we play all over the place. We play in Virginia City and Reno and other places around the state. Obviously, we love playing here at home. So we have a Christmas program on December 17th at the Opera House, and it's an Irish Christmas. We've got some of our own original songs and then a lot of traditional Christmas music, and it's just a nice night to come out and enjoy the decorations in the Opera House, enjoy some nice holiday music. We're kind of like anybody that's my age or older would remember the Smothers Brothers, and we kind of play that way on stage. We
Oh, how wonderful. Once we are actually more open, Rainbow Comedy Central, and I'm gonna have to invite you guys up here because that sounds just up our alley. Let me ask you, so Mike, he plays the accordion. Are you playing an instrument as well, or are you the vocalist?
I'm a multi-instrumentalist as well. And I mean multi. In this particular show, I think I'm going to be playing somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 different instruments, as well as singing. I am our lead singer, but I play piano and guitar, saxophone.
I wish I was closer to you. I'd love to play with you guys.
Yeah, I'm opening the show with the piano and some piano tunes while we warm up the squeeze box. And I generally mostly play guitar in most of our shows, but I also play Irish whistles, I play the Irish drum, the hand drum, the baron. We're going tropical on a song, so I got to break out my ukulele, and so it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be a fun night.
Do you have recordings? Is there anywhere? I mean, can you send me any links? Do you have anything up anywhere?
We don't have anything posted online. We did record a CD a couple years ago, and I could send you one of those for sure.
Oh, I would love it.
We've recorded most of the tracks for our second CD. We're just kind of doing some final mixes on our songs. We were hoping to have it done before this show, but it just hasn't worked out. So our hope is to have it before we do our St. Patrick's Day show, wherever that ends up being. We're hoping to have that our second round CD out at that time. And we have looked into possibly putting it up on like iTunes and making it available for download purchase. And that's a whole new avenue for us, a new territory.
That sounds wonderful. Do people, this is a silly question maybe, do people dance?
Some, Irish music, the Christmas program will be a little bit different, and we are going to get, the thing is Irish music is very interactive. And that's how we like it. We really promote people getting involved, singing along. We do all sorts of crazy stuff to try to get people engaged in the music with us and being active. And yeah, we get people jump up and do a jig with us. I'll get out there and do a jig with somebody. We try to keep it very jovial and very light and fun. And that's where the kind of the Smothers Brothers back and forth banter that Ralph and I have, and the joking and whatnot. We try to really engage the audience and interact with them. And it's always fun when, especially we've got some of the little kids here that just love our music, and they're always dancing. So that brings me big smiles. And
well, I'll definitely try and make it down. Is there anything else? Thanks for sharing your lunch hour with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the people of the county while we're chatting today?
I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for asking me and having me aboard today. I just want to wish everybody, obviously, a blessed Thanksgiving and hopefully a blessed holiday season as we make our way through December and up into Christmas. It's a time, I want people to be kind. And again, you mentioned it, but if there's a serious issue with my thought, and I don't know where it's going to go, but of going to a 4-day work week, come talk to me. I'm not 100% sold on it. I was just making the point because I was asked to do some analysis on it, that there could be an actual financial benefit. It could be a benefit to my staff and to myself. I still have a son in high school that, I like to be gone on Fridays to go watch him play sports. And Kathy that works for me is the same. Her boy's a senior this year. She wants to go see him play on Fridays. And then Michael, my new employee, he has a little guy, Ollie, that he has to try to find sitters for every Friday. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. He has to take Fridays off so he can accommodate being home for his boy. So it would work for me. If it doesn't work for everybody else, I get it. I don't want everybody to have to do the same as us, but I think it would be great to have the flexibility.
Well, it would be nice if there was coordination between the school district and the rest of the county, because it sounds like an inadvertent conflict of schedules.
It has been from the beginning, and it was worse for me at the beginning because all my kids were in grade school at that time. But thankfully, my wife, wasn't working at that time, and we were able to we made it happen. But it's a challenge for people here. And again, as older folks like me start looking at retiring from our positions and we're looking to fill positions, I agreed with Lisa that could become a challenge and an impediment to the applicant pool for jobs going forward if we've got young people with young kids. And that is what's moving into our area. And, if those are the people we want to fill these positions down the road, maybe we should at least think about it. Or as the sheriff threw out there, the possibility of some flex time scheduling or something that could maybe make things work for people that do have school age kids. And
Right. Well,
that being said,
it almost is as if the school district might have to be the one to adjust. If, it sounds really problematic.
we thought it might be temporary when it was first implemented, but like I said, it's been 12, 14 years now, and it's not going back. Everybody really likes it. It works well for the sports scheduling and those type of things. So the school district's not going backwards at this point.
So the county's the side that's going to have to adjust.
Or we just, you deal with
Or just keep living with it. Yeah.
You keep living with it. You deal with the applicants that are able to or interested in applying, and they either have to come up with their solutions for their family or themselves, or they don't apply for the county job.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Mike. And again, happy holidays.
Same to you.
And I'm going to let this be this week's County Commission news. And I'm going to close with we had a recent loss in our community. And I'm going to, as I told the family that I would, I'm going to read the obituary for Judy Costa. And this was submitted by Costa. It is with a heavy heart that the family of Judy Costa announces her passing on November 15th, 2021 at the age of 75. Judy was born on October 10th, 1946. She spent the majority of her adult life in Northern California and Nevada, caring for her young family and tending to aging relatives. Judy's professional life was spent as a waitress, working in restaurants and bars all over the Golden and Silver States. She spent the last 17 years of her life in Crescent Valley, Nevada, as the owner and operator of the Ranch House, a local eatery and watering hole. Judy was preceded by her beloved Robert Bob Costa and mother Betty Nanny Sellers. Judy is survived by two brothers, Charles and Howard, her only son, Raymond Anthony Costa, grandchildren Joseph, Troy Costa, Travis James Costa, and Shaylee Costa, and grandchildren Caleb, Jem, Ayasha, Yoshi, and Bailey. She also leaves behind 9 cherished fur babies and many, many revered Crescent Valley patrons and friends. Again, Mike, thanks for joining me, and I will see you at the next County Commission meeting, if not sooner.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.